I'm Chad Roberts, and I want to welcome you to this series called We the People. Our team has created this resource because, probably like you, we are greatly concerned about the direction our country is going. We believe that there are some important voices that can lend to the conversation. As a matter of fact, rather than arguing, rather than yelling or screaming or demanding our point of view, what we want to do is we want to have conversations. We want to create great and engaging conversation. What you and I are witnessing is the dismantling of our country. What does it mean? Where is it leading? Most important, what can we do about it? As Christians, we have always enjoyed sort of a home field advantage in America. I don't think I have to tell you that has changed. So how are we to think? How are we to process what we see and what we hear going on in the country today? Most important, how are we to respond? That's what this series is about. We want to learn how to think well. We want to think correctly, and as a result, we want to respond rightly to the challenges that is facing our country. You know, what goes on in Washington, most of us feel like we're very limited in how we can change that, short possibly of our vote. As Christians, we have always enjoyed home field advantage in America. But I don't have to tell you, that has changed. What we cannot lose sight of as Christ followers is that behind every headline rages a fierce spiritual war. You and I cannot get entangled in all of the arguments, in all of the divisiveness of this day. No, you and I need to rise above all of that. We need to create civil conversation. We need to have logical debate. We need to have civil discourse. But we don't need to get entangled in the rhetoric, in the divisiveness, in the hatred that we see in today's America. No, we need to rise above it. That's what this project is about. This summer, I read one of the greatest books of the year that I've read yet, and it was called The Accidental President. It was about Harry S. Truman. I've enjoyed so much learning more about his presidency and his life. And in Truman's first address to Congress after FDR passed unexpectedly, Truman said these amazing words. He said, "What brings us together as Americans are our values." Now, fast forward to today, to the current administration, I heard our president say, "What brings us together as Americans is our love for the country." Now, I noticed a big difference there. I don't know if you've ever been to the beach and leisurely spent time in the water and allowed the water to drift you. Then all of a sudden, you look around and you're in an unfamiliar place. Nothing looks the same to you. That's a scary feeling. I think that's where we are as a country. We have drifted from our values. If we can go back and identify what our values are, then whether you're left or you're right, whether you're blue or you're red, whether you're Republican or Democrat or independent, you can appreciate, you can respect our values. The problem is, in my view, we've drifted from those values. And so now our leadership says it's our love for country. No, I think it's greater than that. I think it's back to what Truman said. It's our values. If we can rediscover that, I think it would bring us back to some common ground. That's why we've created this resource called We the People. I want you to find optimism. I want you to find hope. I want you to find God in today's America. And I think much of that depends upon our attitude and whether or not we will choose that. I hope this resource helps you in your thinking, in the confusion of today, the noise of today, the various narratives of today. Let's rise above it. Let's go back to our values. Let's look to the Lord, and let's let Him change our nation as He desires to do. Thank you for listening. My name is Chad Roberts. I want to welcome you to this series called We the People. We've invited a selected number of guests that we feel like can really add a great deal of value to the conversations that are happening in our country right now. You know, we are more divided today than ever before. And as we talk about the problems that are facing our nation, facing our communities, we have invited people that we feel like can lend their voice, that can help be a solution rather than part of the problem. And my guest right now, I've enjoyed getting to know so much. His name is Jon Lundberg, and he is a state senator, one of our state senators for Tennessee. Jon, I want to welcome you today, and I'm so thrilled to have you as a guest.
Great to be here. You said short program. I can talk for a long time. So,
well, Jon, tell our listeners a little bit about your background, kind of some things that you've done in your past. You have such a remarkable background with your service career and other things that you've done. And then tell us what led you to get into politics and how you're serving right now today.
You bet. Probably I'll start with the crowning achievement. Married almost 32 years. Mm-hmm. So 2 kids, a daughter who is just turned 31 and a son who's 25.
Wonderful.
And they're all great. And I started in broadcast news and spent about 5 years in broadcast news before I moved to Bristol. Did the 5:30 and 11 o'clock news on Channel 5 long ago, and always wanted to start my own company, and started that almost 30 years ago. And in between all that, spent a great deal of time in the Navy Reserve, 29 years, commanded 7 units and retired in 17. Had the opportunity to work for some amazing people there. I worked for Secretary Rumsfeld in the Department of Defense. My last job was I was the senior advisor to the chairman of the Joint Staff. Wow. And I have been blessed in many, many ways. I've served in the Senate now. This is my 2nd term. Yes. So I'm going into my 7th year, and I spent 5 terms, which is 10 years in the House before this.
Wow. Very fascinating. Well, thank you for your service to our country. Thank you for the way that you're serving our state and our communities today. Well, I'm excited to get your perspective because as we've talked and I've got to know you a little better, I enjoy your perspective, and I hope that you can help people like myself who have a lot of questions right now, people who not quite sure what to do in the climate we're living in right now politically. You know, a recent poll that was highlighted through ABC and NBC was that 85% of Americans, think about that, they are concerned about the direction our country is going. Are you concerned about the direction we're moving?
Sure.
How so?
Double D's. So the easy answer to that would be I'm concerned about the direction the government's going because we have a massive amount of debt. Never before in our history have we had debt like this, $30 trillion, astronomical figure. Perspective for you, in Tennessee, we have a great economy, and this is not a plug for Tennessee, and we have some debt, but if we wanted to pay off every bit of debt in Tennessee, every man, woman, and child would have to write a check for about $287. It's a lot of money, but I think in general, we could probably pay that off if we all needed to desperately. In the federal government, if we needed to pay off that debt, every man, woman, and child would have to write a check for about $90,000.
Wow.
I can't do that.
What a difference.
And it's huge. But a bigger not bigger, but maybe equally concerning one to me, is we have been growing more and more dependent, not just on the dollar, but on government. That concerns me when individuals look to government to solve the problems and the issues. That's not how we were founded. Government is not the answer. It's individual accountability and responsibility, ultimately. And we seem to be going a different way. That dramatically concerns me. And politicians, no offense since I am one, seem to be putting out those kinds of things to attract attention to themselves and go, I'm here to fix this problem. Government does not fix problems. It usually creates them.
That's right.
And that's a huge concern. And that's regardless of your political party. We're not the answer. You know what concerns me is today, 9.1 million people work for the federal government. That's over 6% of the entire workforce, of everyone working. 6 out of 100 people work for the federal government. That concerns me. I was, candidly, when I first ran for office, I was cynical of government. I am more cynical of government now than I was before.
Wow. And I think those are the exact type of people we need in office.
Yeah, I think the people that should run for office are the ones who don't want to run for office, who don't want to be there.
Yeah.
And so many times, and I think that's also why some of what we do is backwards, because we look often to politicians and they're exalted, they're politicians. No. If you look in any company, you look to the CEO and they're in charge, they can hire and fire everyone. Well, myself, the governor can't fire me, so the Speaker of the Senate can't fire me, but individuals can. And they need to realize the power is with people.
That's right. We the people.
We the people. But fundamentally, I think in so many ways, we have forgotten that politicians work for us.
That's right.
Because we are a republic, and that's how this was designed, not the other way around. So, sorry.
No, you're touching on exactly why we're wanting to create this project, because when you think about we the people, I heard the other day one of our founding fathers, I was reading something where they were saying that in America, you talked about us being a republic and this is how we were founded. They said, in America, you will not be able to inherit a title. You will not become a senator because your father was a senator.
Right.
No, you're voted in. It's we the people.
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons, Senator Lundberg, why we want to do this, we want to speak to people particularly who don't know what to do. Perhaps they feel really discouraged in the divisiveness and the climate that we live in. Maybe they just go, well, why should I care? We're constantly hearing narratives. We're always hearing negativity. What would you say to someone who goes, well, why vote or why get involved even in the local level because I don't feel like I can make a difference? What would you say to them?
You make all the difference. That's how this whole thing was founded and started. And the local level is the most critical level around. In the example that I give is, we talk just like we were talking about, those we exalt. We talk about the presidential election and those who are running for president or U.S. senator or Congress people. Well, those federal officials can impact and change our life a year from now. As your state senator, I can impact and change your life 6 months from now. As your local school board, board of mayor and aldermen, city council, they can affect your life tomorrow. And that's critical. So I would tell people, number one, vote, but also not just in the presidential election. Don't come out to vote just every 4 years and say it mattered. It matters locally more than anything. And to get involved. Ask questions. Are you going to get frustrated? I don't know anyone who's not, and will always be, but that's the beauty of this. Ask questions. Determine what's important to you. And there's a lot of noise, a lot of chatter out there because, we hear, 30 years ago we had ABC, NBC, CBS, and today we have ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, CNBC, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, and everything else.
Oh.
And it's like, okay, clear that slate and go, what's important to you? What's important to your family? What's important to your neighborhood, your community, your state?
Your backyard.
Yeah, and go from there. And go, these are my critical, important issues. And this is my philosophy, my ideology of what's important and why. And this is how I can make an impact.
I think you have a very important story on the power of what just even one vote can do. Talk to us a little bit about, first I want you to share your story about how you won your seat by the slimmest of margins, but then it's not just voting, it's engaging. Talk to us a little bit about that by sharing your story.
Yeah, the first campaign was for state representative, and Representative John Crawford and I ran against each other. He's a great guy. Have immense respect for him. I'll tell you right now, I am incredibly proud that he is my state representative. Yeah. I can tell you about his character and integrity, his family, and there's not enough good things to say. Now, 17 years ago, we ran against each other. Now, I was not against John Crawford, and I don't think he was against me. We were running for
the seat.
The seat.
Yes.
That's a really important distinction.
Yeah.
And at the end of that, it wasn't a personal campaign where we were slinging mud at each other. We were just trying to outwork the other person. At the end, I won that race by 17 votes, which, in my mind, I walked down an extra street that maybe he missed in his family. But we're dear friends, and that's important. Now, that 17 votes, when you talk about one vote matters, in my mind, mathematically, that means 9 people could have changed that vote. Because if 9 people didn't vote for me and voted for John, that election would have had a different outcome. And not necessarily a bad one, because John and I, again, philosophically, I think are incredibly similar. And that's a good thing. I wish most politics was like that. It's not. And that's not necessarily, in some cases, bad, because I don't know how in some states I could be quiet and not have some real issues with some of the candidates. But I think it's unfortunate that we've lost it, and now it's not the issues, it's how loud some people can scream.
Yeah.
And if you've ever been in a debate or in an argument, when you start screaming, I'm sorry, you're done. You're not having a logical discussion of an exchange of ideas. Can I change your mind? If I'm screaming at you, you're not going to listen any longer. So.
Yeah. I've noticed such a difference in recent years as well. I can remember, not too terribly long ago, news outlets would have differing opinions as a panel, right? Mm-hmm. And they would discuss issues. Now I notice, on the rare times that does happen, it gets heated so fast, you can't understand anything they're saying, and it's just a disaster.
Yeah, everybody's talking.
Everyone's talking. No one's listening.
Yeah. And there was, in most news programs, there was that clear delineation between this is comment, this is news, and then we go into here's point counterpoint or whatever.
There you go, that's right.
Here are these two individuals who have dramatically different views on whatever the topic, and they go at it, and you go back to whatever the programming is. Well, now media has blurred all that, and that philosophical bent now bleeds into whatever the program is, and it's tough for us, and I mean all of us, to distinguish what's legitimate, what's not, what's news, what's opinion. Every journalist will tell you they have opinions, but you try to keep that out of your broadcasts. I don't think anybody tries anymore, which is sad.
I agree.
Because we lose, when I was in journalism, credibility was all you had. If you misspelled a name or gave a fact incorrectly, you lost credibility, and that's all you had. Now it's one of those where I'm giving opinions. So,
given your background in journalism and broadcasting, I think you could really speak clearly to this. I heard Trey Gowdy say recently that media used to be the referee of society, they would report the facts. Today, now, as you were saying, depending on what side of the aisle they prefer, they tip the scales to what direction they lean. What would you say to an average citizen like myself what would you say to me of how I should hold to common sense, perhaps even hold to my convictions, and not be so influenced by the various narratives that are out there right now?
Keep perspective, and every once in a while you have to, whether it's turn that set off and go, is this really important, or is this the issue of the day and of the moment, or something just to inflame me? Because every party wants to throw red meat out and go, this is an issue that'll get my base excited or get them mad or whatever. Is that really critical? Is that really important to me right now? Try to keep that perspective. Otherwise, I think Gowdy's point is exact. If you look at a basketball game and say, take out the referees, it won't take long for that to be completely out of control.
That's right.
And the outcome is something, frankly, no one wants to watch.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in many ways, we have to become our own referees and take that responsibility and accountability back upon ourselves.
Which goes back to our own backyard, our own communities, even our own families. Would you agree?
Precisely. Absolutely. You know, what's important for you and your family? And that has to be every person's number one priority. I hope. So I know when we hire people at the company, I tell people, if this company and being here and doing whatever it is that we're doing today is the number one most important thing you have in life, then your priorities are poor, because it's got to be your family. Because a job will change, a job will end eventually for all of us, but your family won't. So what's important? And what's important, obviously, for your kids, and then for your grandkids. And frankly, you take that even broader and go, what can I do to make that road more clear? You don't want to pave it. For our kids, we want it to be a better life, but we're not going to take care of them for their life. We want to set them up so that they can be individuals and they can succeed and grow and do on their own. That's, if you say, what's the measure of success? I would argue that success isn't the car you drive or how much money you have. You look down of your kids. Are they independent on their own? Do they think well? They might think differently, but that doesn't mean that's bad. Do they think well? And anyway, sorry, I was going off on a tangent.
No, actually, you take us down that road of kids and family. Part of your responsibilities as a state senator is that you're chair of education, correct?
Yes.
Tell me your thoughts on school choice and where you think our state, not just the state of Tennessee, but the country at large. I know Arizona seems to be really leading the way in school choice. I have heard that Tennessee is looking and trying to do the same. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm a huge advocate for school choice. We have education savings account. We have school choice in Shelby and Davidson County in small areas. I would expand that everywhere.
Is that kind of like a pilot program?
It is a pilot program. It's only for schools that are failing. And I wish people from here could go to other areas of the state and see what you have to send your child to, what these parents are having to send their child to this school. With a failing school, not only is the school itself physically bad, but the teachers, frankly, the administrators, they need help. And they should have the opportunity to send their children wherever they want to. That's not to take away from public education. By far, we have great public education, especially in East Tennessee.
Right.
But I'm a huge advocate for that independence we have as parents. So, we decide what our children are going to eat at night. So, from 0 to 18, I think we should exercise that control for where they're going to spend the time.
Yeah.
And I think,
Do you think other states are going to follow Arizona's lead?
I think so, as long as it continues to go well. So, and I think it will. More control. We talked about control at the local level, federal, state, and local. What works well? It works well for families also.
That's great. Let me ask you this, Senator Lundberg. The push for the current administration to forgive college debt. Tell me your thoughts on that.
Oh, I'm angry. This is one of those things that just angers me. When I'll go back 30 years ago when our first child was born, and my wife and I said we're going to save $25 a week, and we put, maybe it was a month actually, and we're going to put it in a savings account because we want to. I believe part of our role was to take care of education for our kids, and that was money we didn't touch at a time when financially we literally couldn't afford the liquid milk for our kids. We were on the powdered stuff, and we saved and scrimped and put money into the account, never touched it, and did everything we could and worked and put money into that account so that when our kids went to school, we could write a check. And I was very proud of that. And I'm horrified now that we are incentivizing, rewarding those who did not. Now, college these days is incredibly expensive. I don't know how you get by with the kind of debt people are incurring, but the role of government isn't to waive that and say, we're going to take care of it. It's, I'm sorry, it's part of business. If you borrow money, you have to pay it back. Why didn't somebody do that with my car? So, well, you've got a car payment. And would you like a little bonus to take care of your car payment? My guess is yes. Or your mortgage? Yes. So, and politically, that's good. And this is one of those, again, we're focusing on one part where it's a bigger aspect. This goes back to both dependence and debt. When I talked about the $30 trillion in debt at the start, this is part of that.
And it's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable.
That's the word you used that really stood out to me.
It's not. We cannot do that. And, we have to incentivize the opposite to occur. And again, when I talked about government creates more problems, people talk about jobs and how many jobs we've created in the state or how many jobs we've created in the federally. Government doesn't create any jobs. Well, it creates government jobs, but it truly doesn't create any jobs. How many jobs I've created in Nashville? I have an assistant, so I guess you could say I created one job, and I've kept that one. So, but I don't create jobs. We create an environment for either companies to grow.
Excellent.
Companies to start, companies to relocate here, or we create an environment for them to shrink, to not come here or move away from here. That's what we do. We don't create jobs.
Fantastic. Senator Lundberg, I love your perspectives. I think that you are able to articulate and communicate such a balanced perspective of how we should think in the environment that we are in. I think so many are concerned with the direction we're going, and I don't know if I've heard anyone articulate it better than what you just did for us. Well, Senator Lundberg, I've enjoyed our conversation so much today, and I think you have such a wonderful and balanced perspective. I think you're able to articulate really well how we should view the climate that we're living in. Let me ask you this as we conclude our conversation today. If there was one thing that you could see change in today's climate, what would you hope to see change?
That everyone who was silent And I think a lot of people who are silent are frankly the majority. We listen to the people who are screaming the loudest and go, we've got to pay attention to them. I wish the people who are quiet wouldn't be, and we could hear from them, and we need to hear from them more. And even if they disagree, disagreement is not a bad thing. That screaming and shouting is, but a disagreement is a great way to find perspective.
It's healthy.
And it is healthy. It is very healthy. And I think that's important. So to get back to that civil discourse, now I understand your perspective. I understand why. And I think about that when I have a dog. I'm a big animal guy, and I remember somebody said, you should have a bill about not chaining up dogs outside when it's 10 degrees. And I said, well, that makes sense. Well, then you hear from a farmer in West Tennessee and you go, oh, you're right. You have cattle dogs and you leave them outside. And, well, that does make sense. Now I understand that perspective is completely different. You've changed my mind. I have a different perspective. That's healthy.
Yes.
That's healthy.
I agree fully. Well, Senator, thank you so much for taking your time with us today. Let me ask you one last bonus question. If you weren't doing the job you're doing right now today, what would be your dream job?
I'm doing it. My dream job. I don't know if I want to say this on camera. You know, I like service. I served in the military. I serve in the legislature. In many ways, I like helping people, and like in the military, you're part of something that's much bigger than you. This is going to sound silly, but if I had anything to do, I would probably run a small hotel somewhere on a beach in some Caribbean island. So a 15-room hotel where you can make a difference, and people would come there to get away and having fun.
All right.
I know that sounds silly, but
no, I love it. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for your service. Thank you for how you're leading our communities and our state. Thank you, sir. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this session of We the People. And if you want to learn more about the resources we create, visit awakenedtograce.com. And there you can find hundreds upon hundreds of life-changing resources. Download our free mobile app wherever you get your favorite apps. You can download it to any device, Awakened to Grace. Thank you for listening.